Alright, so I'm sitting here with Jeff Kuliak. We've known each other for 5 years now, and this is our second base together. And he's leaving to go to a new base here pretty soon, tomorrow. And this is the last 24 hours that we'll have with each other for a little while. So just want to pick his brain for a little bit, just see what he has to say, and go from there. So we were at Canada together in New Mexico, and at that time I was a single striper and he was a senior airman. He's shown me through the ropes, told me everything I needed to know, and now we're both E5, so kind of worked out pretty well. But yeah, he actually got me into motorcycle riding. We've been riding for a couple times. We were on a softball team together, so it's been pretty good. But what are some of the goals that you want to do now that you're out of here?
Now that I'm leaving Kunsan.
Yeah.
My biggest goal for the military life is to make tech within the next 2 times, and then to maybe make master within 5 or 6 years. Personal wise, I already got the house. I got everything I need. I need to reduce my bills. So me and Jessica are both focused on getting our debt to only the house right now.
Awesome.
So that's the biggest goals for right now, reducing debt, so that way I don't owe anybody any money.
That's pretty good. And so, like, we've also been talking about not even like personal things, but just like the things that we see, basic stuff. So, like, we talked about like welfare and like food stamps and things like that. And you want to give us your 2 cents on that? And how you feel about it? Maybe a better way to go about it.
So I don't have a problem with the welfare system as a whole. I think that it's important to help people when they need help. But I think that if human beings and Americans in general viewed their decisions from a societal perspective instead of an individual perspective, that the U.S. would be a lot better place. Like if they thought, hey, am I financially stable enough to have kids? If the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't have a kid. Because if you're not ready for that responsibility, you're not doing harm, not just doing harm to the child and yourself. You have to look at it from a community perspective, that this kid is now going to be raised in a house that doesn't have the funds and the means to give it the proper life that has been proven to breed success. Not to say that some people don't come out of bad areas
I get what you're saying,
making their life awesome, which is awesome, but the majority of people who are born into a bad situation never escape it, and they just perpetuate the cycle of bad situations.
I get that. So, like, what happens if, like, you have, like, an accident kid?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, you know. Kids are...
So if they can't take care of that kid, is it, in your eyes, in your opinion, is it wrong for them to hand up that kid for adoption?
No. You need to just be real with yourself. I think that adoption, if we used it the way that it should be used, could be the best thing in the world, because if you're not ready to have a kid, to give it the life that it needs, the clothes, the food, the housing, in the right areas, with the right schools, then you should say, well, I wasn't ready. Or you can ask for help. Like, there's nothing wrong with asking for help, but when you're depending on the help instead of using that as a last resort, that's where you fall.
So you're saying they're moving that as like a first resort instead of a last resort?
Well, I mean, I know people don't use welfare as a first resort. They're not like, oh, I just don't want to have a job, so I'm going to get on welfare. That's not usually how it works.
Yeah.
Usually they are using it as a last resort, but then people become reliant on it, and people abuse the system. Where I'm from in Chicago, people were using their link cards, which is the welfare cards, to buy cartons of Newports. And, you know, I'm a smoker, but if I was on welfare, and I needed money for housing and stuff to take care of my family, I would stop smoking the first thing.
But do you think that maybe the government should make it to where if you are using that card, obviously you shouldn't be smoking, because that's like that's a want, not a need. You know what I mean? So maybe they shouldn't allow you to buy those things on that card, right? Maybe we could phase that out.
What happened with the Chicago system was that people would go to gas stations in the neighborhood, and they would say, well, I got my Link card, I want a pack of Newports. Can you charge it as a bushel of apples?
I see what you're saying.
And they were saying, yeah, because the money still goes into that gas station's account. You can't blame them. I mean, it's more money for them. While it is illegal, everybody's got to make their money somehow, you know. But if the government gave out, instead of maybe money, if the government paid more attention to people, because people in general want to work, they want to be a member of society, in my opinion.
What makes you think that?
I don't think that people are lazy, and I don't think people want to leech off the government, but when it gets to the point that you're dragged down and you're wore out and you try to go find a job, but there's not jobs out there, you don't have the money to move,
You're stuck, essentially.
You're stuck. And the problem, one of the biggest problems that I think, is that the U.S. has forgotten the societal aspect of things, that if we make college free, people don't rely on selling drugs. People don't rely on stealing things because they have this higher education that they can go use. Maybe not even free, but reduced. People are paying $20,000 a year to go to school. Not everybody can afford that. Not everybody wants to go into debt.
Yeah.
And if the government paid more attention to Section 8 housing, for example, and they gave people decent housing in a decent neighborhood that needed it for a short amount of time, gave them job training, gave them some life skills classes, then they could probably dig themselves out of the hole. But the U.S. and other places in the world has gotten more to a individual aspect of, well, I'm going to make more money if this happens.
Yeah.
The Industrial Revolution was a great thing. We got a lot of things done. We got wages increased so people weren't getting paid a cent an hour to make iron. But then now with wages being what it is, it's all about dollars and cents and not taking care of people.
Right.
So you got corporations cutting their costs, which you can't blame them. They don't need to make more money, but they want to. But all that does is bring the people who manufacture the things and the people who do all the hard work, they get less money. So then they have to go do more to live the same life that, and the CEO's making, in some cases, 200 times more than the worker. That's kind of a big issue.
Yeah.
That's a big gap.
And I guess, like, at what point do you have enough money? So, like, let's say, like, you're a sports figure or whatever, even a CEO. Like, if you have, $5 million, like, you can't take that with you once you die, Like, at what point do you just say you're done? You know what I mean? Like, I can live off of this money, and I'm good for the rest of my life,
Right. I understand what you're saying, but people, again, they don't think about it that way. If sports icons, I'm glad that they're making all that money. It's awesome that they are afforded that opportunity to get paid that much. But does anybody really need to get paid $207 million for 7 years of work? In, Alex Rodriguez's case. In reality, no. That's why one of the biggest reasons why I like Derrick Rose is because while he was getting paid all that money, he was born and raised in housing in Chicago, and he gave a lot of his money back to the city of Chicago. He understood that helping other people was just as important as him making his own money.
Right. And
now with the new CBAs, the way that sports is working, all that's going to happen is players are going to become richer and richer and richer. and ticket prices are only going to get higher and higher and higher, and it's going to get to the point that it did in some places where people just couldn't afford to go to games.
Yeah.
So then at that point, what do? You lower the ticket prices a little bit, but
and you're going to hear the athletes complaining.
exactly. Then you hear the athletes complain, well, how come I'm not making $160 million a year?
Yeah. I think that was like one of the good things about like growing up too. Like you could just go catch a baseball game for $5 and just get bleacher seats or.
Right. Growing up in Chicago, me and my dad used to go to Blackhawks games. We would pay $10 for the cheap seats back when they sucked, and we would go sit wherever we wanted. I mean, granted, now they're a much better team, but you got to pay $200 just to go sit up top, and I mean that's okay. You know, they got to make their money and stuff too. But at some point, it's going to come to fans can't afford to go to the games.
What are you going to do then? Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If we're going to backtrack, you're talking about the cigarettes and for the bushel of apples or whatever. I guess like in cases of like Colorado and Washington, would you do the same thing for weed? Marijuana?
Meaning what?
So you could put it on a card?
Like a government-sponsored card?
Right. Because if you're already going to get cigarettes in it, why not?
Weed is a different kind of thing. Some people view it as a burden. Some people view it as a godsend, if you believe in that stuff. I've seen videos of people with Parkinson's who are, you know, how Parkinson's is. They take a drop of oil and 5 minutes later, for the first time in 5 years, they can hold their hand out steady. And if something like that comes from the ground, there's got to be a reason why it's illegal. Nobody has ever overdosed on marijuana, but people will go get drunk and die of alcohol poisoning. People will... Cigarettes is a long-term killer. You're probably not going to die from smoking one cigarette.
I get what you're saying.
But
long-term use.
There are certain things that were made illegal at a time when fear-mongering was the big thing to do. The reason why, the widely accepted reason why marijuana was illegalized is because people associated it with Mexican gangs back in the 30s. So they would say, well, you don't want Mexican gangs around. So Mexican gang members smoke weed. So if we make weed illegal, then the Mexican gangs will go away. But in reality, the war on drugs, in my opinion, has been a total and utter failure. Because when you look at countries like Portugal, countries who treat drug addiction as a medical issue and not a criminal issue, again, from a societal aspect, if you get people the help to get off drugs, instead of just putting them in jail for having a plant in their pocket. That's, I mean, when you think about it as a simple thing, if I was walking around with a bag of literal grass, not weed, but grass from the outside in my pocket, and that was illegal, and I went to jail for years for having a plant not touched by man, not made in a factory, made in some science lab. Like, I completely agree that there are some things that should be illegal. I'm not saying to make all drugs legal.
Right.
But weed has the potential to do a lot of help for mankind, especially in the chronic pain, chronic illness sense of it.
Yeah.
There's people who have early onset arthritis, osteoporosis, Parkinson's, these diseases of the joints and muscles that they are in pain all the time. Mm-hmm. And there's certain strands of marijuana that you don't get high, but your joints relax, your muscles relax, your whole body relaxes, but you don't feel the head high, and those people can finally be pain-free for a couple hours.
Right.
Without doing any major harm to their body. I don't see anything wrong with that. If big government viewed it more as you're helping people with pains do more things and not live such a terrible life, nobody wants to be in pain all the time.
Yeah,
you know.
why not?
And I'm not saying that it should be just people in pain all the time that are able to smoke weed. If it was up to me, if it was completely my decision, weed would be legalized nationwide. Because I don't think that it's, with some regulation obviously, but I don't think that it's should be illegal to the point that it is. Heroin, cocaine, ecstasy, all that shit, completely agree.
Yeah.
Don't make it legal.
Yeah.
That's just a life ruiner. But somebody who sits in their basement or in their living room after a fucking hard day of pouring concrete and shit and wants to relax a little bit.
Yeah, a
controlled environment. That's exactly right. You know, if you let them drink and have 10 minutes where they can forget their sorrows, why not give them a couple hours of pain-free life? If they're not going to go anywhere and drive, and you know, why not let them sit back and relax? I mean, we prescribe pain pills, an opioid, which is literally, I mean, it's an opium thing, and opium's illegal too, but you get people hooked on opioids and it fucking wrecks their life.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's seen the heroin epidemic that's been going through the States because it does things to people. It makes them forget certain things. You know, it puts them in a place that they weren't at. Mm-hmm. So it relaxes them. Or I don't know what it does. I've never done heroin, but there's a reason why people do drugs, and it's not just because they want to. People do drugs to, in my opinion, forget things or to enhance their life in some way.
Use it as an outlet. Maybe.
Use it as an outlet, but if big government started thinking, hey, why are these people using drugs? Why do we have an opioid epidemic where we have doctors prescribing hundreds of pain pills to people instead of here's a plant and we're going to try and figure out why your joints are hurting so much and see if we can't do anything. And there's some things that you can't do anything about, which is fine. You have to manage pain sometimes instead of curing it. But the pain industry, the medical industry relies on people staying sick and in pain.
Yeah, that's how they make their money.
They don't want to cure people. They want to manage people, manage their pain. We want to manage your pain. We don't want to get rid of your pain. We want to manage your cancer and give you chemotherapy instead of putting all of our fucking money into cancer research, how to cure cancer. We find ways to prolong your life. We're going to give you chemotherapy, which can get rid of cancer in some cases. But there are statistics out there that say that almost half of people die from chemotherapy and not cancer when they get it. So if I had a gun, said 50-50 chance, says you're going to die or there's a blank in here, are you going to let me pull the trigger? Would you? Or would you take your chances? I've always told my wife that, or my family, that if I get cancer, I'm not going to do chemotherapy because I'm not going to die from a chemical being pumped into my body. I would rather die in my bed when I know I'm going to die.
You're taking it on your terms, yeah.
Exactly.
I think you're the one that told me that. You said, because you're talking about treating people with their addictions, that some country has free...
Portugal.
Free rehab?
Yep. Free rehab is... Like I said, there's reasons why people do drugs, there's reasons why people drink, and instead of viewing it as, well, you have heroin, so you're going to go to jail, where there's more heroin and more meth and all this stuff, and we're going to put you in with a bunch of criminals and probably get your ass kicked and raped. If you put them in a mental health facility, in a drug addiction facility, find out the reason why they're doing drugs, and maybe help that instead of throwing them in somewhere where they're going to be beat down and packed in with violent criminals, because drug offense is not a violent crime. But you put them in the same location as violent criminals, then what you're going to get is a violent criminal being born, because they're going to say, well, if I can start kicking people's asses to get what I want, then I'm going to start kicking people's asses to get what I want. That's human nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking with Bernie about that too, and he was saying that if you get caught growing one plant, just one plant, it's 10 years.
Yep. In some states it is.
Versus someone who, vehicular manslaughter, 2 to 5.
Well, I hate to keep bringing that example up, but that Brock kid from Stanford who violently raped that girl, he got 3 months in jail and probation because the judge thought, oh, well, jail wouldn't be good for him. So you could walk around with depression and you could walk around hating life, or you could do something like, marijuana or heroin or cocaine to make yourself feel better. But there's a reason why. There's no reason to rape somebody.
It's true.
There's no reason ever to touch somebody who says, don't touch me.
Yeah.
Life safety would be maybe a different thing, like if they're about to get hit by a train, pull them away. But there's no reason to ever rape somebody.
Yeah.
There's no reason to ever put your hands on somebody in a sexual way if they don't want it. That's just you being a selfish asshole.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's interesting because, we take all these classes and stuff about, SARC and everything else, and it still happens, Like you try and drill it into somebody's brain, like, hey, look, something that you've been taught from elementary school, hey, look, don't do this, don't do that, and it still happens, and it's like, I don't want to say people are surprised, but people are like, I guess how I am, how does this still happen when every year we have a meeting about it, going over it, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this,
Well, it's not taught like it should be in elementary schools and young schools. And a good example of that is dress code policies for females. My daughter goes to a school where she can't wear spaghetti strap tank tops. And some people might say, well, that's good because she shouldn't be showing that much skin. But if you taught kids, young kids, that, hey, yeah, she's wearing spaghetti straps, but why should that distract somebody from learning? If you taught young boys and girls, it's not just boys that rape, but if you taught young boys and girls that let people be who they're going to be, let them wear what they're going to wear, and if they don't want to be with you, then you move on. You don't force yourself on people, which is something I've been teaching my kids, let people be who they're going to be.
Yeah.
But it's not taught in schools. Schools' dress codes are a terrible thing. To a certain extent, you don't want them wearing underwear and fucking bras and shit out in school, but there's no reason why my daughter shouldn't be able to wear spaghetti straps in school.
But do you think they have those rules in place just so that the question or the statement doesn't come up, well, she was dressed a certain way, so then...
So then what?
So then maybe it's implied. You know what I mean? How some people say that? Oh, well, she's dressed this way, and it's why would you dress that way if you weren't looking for this attention or that attention or to be perceived this way? You know what I mean? Maybe they're trying to get away from that statement.
I honestly think that all that they're doing with dress codes is trying to indoctrinate kids into a certain way of thinking. I think that that's been the point of the United States education system since the 50s, to get kids to follow these rules. You're going to do this, you need to get A's, you need to go to college, you need to do this, this, and this to be happy and to be successful. But in reality, there are some homeless people who are as happy as they can be because they think that they're okay. I'm not going to tell somebody what you need to be successful. If successful to you is you're alive and you're enjoying life, then if you're alive and enjoying life, you're rocking it. To a certain extent. Obviously if what you want to do is beat people's asses, then you shouldn't be doing that because that's a violent thing.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't hurt anybody else or hurt yourself, like doing heroin, you should be able to do what you want to do. If some people want to, if you want to live as a vagrant or a vagabond, then go fucking travel. Ride on trains and go be happy and do you, you know. But success lately in America has been determined by what college did you go to, what CEO were you working for, what company have you been working for, whereas in reality, I view myself as a successful person. I got an awesome wife, 2 great kids, I got a house that I still pay on it, but I have one. My kids have clothes, they got food, I got 2 dogs, my parents are living real close, my parents worked their asses off their whole lives. Who's to tell me I'm not successful because I don't make $1 million a year? I don't need to make $1 million a year, but that's a personal choice for me.
But within that, all those things make you successful in your eyes.
In my eyes, yeah, I mean, I've wanted a family since I was, I don't know, fucking 5 years old. And I got everything that I needed. I have everything that I need. You know, I don't need these fancy electronics or computers. It's nice to have, but I'm successful enough in my own eyes to be able to afford that. But if some people don't want that, then that's cool. You want to go live in Vegas and be a homeless guy who uses all your money to go gamble at the slot machines, you're not hurting me by doing that. I might not agree with it, but I'm not going to tell you how to live, which nowadays people try to tell other people how to live, which is wrong in my eyes.
So if you see like these new kids and stuff that come up and like you said, you don't need these things, but in their eyes, they need those things. You know what I mean? When essentially it's a want. Because you don't need those things to live. So like if you have some 18-year-old, you know, just gets to boot camp or whatever, obviously you don't get your phone, and they're like, it's an addiction, you know, because they're like, oh, I need a phone, and then they ended up turning it into, you know, well, you can have your phone for 1 hour a week or something like that, you know, and it's just kind of like, does that make them successful in your eyes because they need that? You know what I mean? Like you said, like you don't need any of those things, but they do. You know.
I don't need them.
Right.
If
they don't need them either.
If they need their phones to be happy, then that's also kind of, I mean, it's an addiction. Too much of anything is not a good thing ever. Too much water you could die from because your body loses its salt and you die. It's happened before in colleges where they make people drink 5-gallon jugs of water and then they die. Too much religion is not a good thing because then you get extremists. Not just Islamic extremists that people want to bring up now, but you get the Crusaders and the Westboro Baptist Church fucking idiots and all these people who try to tell people how to live their lives.
So how do you create that happy medium? Like how do you go from not being addicted to it, but not going to the bare necessities? Like how do you manage it?
That's a personal thing. But other people need to realize when you're doing something too much. And they need to tell you, hey, you've been on your phone for like 6 hours. Like, are you okay?
It's like an outside person almost.
An outside person. Not saying like it's wrong that you're on your phone for 6 hours, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that human beings have lost face-to-face contact over the last 10 years to a point where kids are more comfortable texting than they are having a face-to-face conversation with you. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, that is a dangerous thing.
Why is that?
Because when you have people not talking to one another, not noticing what's going on, you know, one of the biggest things about the military and the Air Force especially, and I'm sure it's in other branches too, is the wingman concept. You know, when I go into work, I see people, and I can notice when they're a little down or when they're, you know, super happy. And you can say, hey, is everything all right? And, yeah, I'm good. But if you're texting somebody, yeah, we have emojis and shit, right? But people don't put their real face behind their little internet profiles. You know, they mask, some people, not all people, but some people mask their true identities behind lies because they're not happy with themselves. Right. And if we realized it, hey, like, you're spending 14 hours on the internet instead of going outside and enjoying everything that the world has. I mean, you can go outside right now on this base and you could just go walk around and, oh wow, these beautiful over here. Look at these mountains, these hills, look at the trees over here. But people want to live their lives on the internet, and people nowadays want more than they have in almost every aspect. Instead of enjoying what's around them and who they're with, people tend
to... a pro and a negative.
People tend to want always more than what they have. And sometimes, yeah, wanting something really bad could be a great thing. But that's, again, wanting too much, anything too much is a bad thing. Like, if you want to be a fucking Ken doll, which is a story, you can look it up, but if you want to be exactly like a Ken doll and you're spending $400,000 on plastic surgery to look like a Ken doll, you know, if that's the only thing that's going to make you happy, then, I mean, how many loans are you going to take out, and how much financial issues are you going to put yourself into? How many problems are you going to get into just to look like a Ken doll?
Right.
But again, if that is the only thing that's going to make you truly happy as a person, I would say you need to reevaluate your life. But if that's the only thing that you need to be happy is to look like a Ken doll, then go for it. I mean, and he did.
You were saying that people don't have enough face-to-face contact, so when you were saying that, I think that our job's a little bit different. So obviously we work 24-hour shifts, so, you know, like let's say like we work finance or something like that. You'll see me for maybe 8 hours out of the day. So like maybe in some people's cases, you can come to work, you can put on a good face, even though, you know, let's say you're having financial trouble at home, or, you know, arguing with a spouse, you know. So for that 8 hours, you could come in and be like, you know what, everything's great. But then, like, I think with our job, you can't.
I don't think you can with an 8 hours job either.
Why is that?
I think that people show, if you look hard enough, people show their true emotions and their true feelings at all points during the day. Like, I've spent 5 years with you, and I know your demeanors pretty well. But even your first week, I was still getting to know you. I might have thought that you had, like, that you were always in problems because you don't smile a lot, you know. You're a very serious person, which is fine. But even that first week that I knew you, I was still, hey, everything all right? And then you'd say, yeah, everything's good. Don't worry. Oh, okay. He seems okay. But when you don't have face-to-face contact, like if I texted you something right now, like, yo, motherfucker, you'd be like, hey, what's up? But I might have been saying, yo, motherfucker, what's going on?
Yeah.
But you can't read that through a text message. You can't read that on Facebook. You can't read people. And not everybody can read people. But I think most people can tell when people are down.
Yeah.
It's a feeling that people get to, oh, that person doesn't look like they're having a good day. Or if I'm talking to you and the way that you say things, I could tell if you're not having a good day, and I could pull you aside and try and cheer you up. But if we were working in different places and I just saw you walking down the street and you were, you know, head hanging, shoulders leaning forward, you know, I'm not the type of person that likes to get involved in people's business, which, I mean, it's a good and a bad thing, because, yeah, it'd be nice if I walked up to every person on the street and said, hey, you look like you're having a rough day, everything all right? But I'm not that person. I'm not going to go ask everybody because I'm not that outgoing. But most people who have people around them, even if you have a core group of 1 or 2 friends, those 1 or 2 friends can tell when something's wrong. Or 1 or 2 acquaintances. You don't even need to have friends. But if you interact with people for more than like a week, you can tell when their moods are going up, moods are going down, and you can, if people stepped in and actually helped, then we'd probably have a lot less people kill themselves, which is a big issue in my eyes. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think you're right with that. And I didn't see it that way, but I definitely get that. I think here it's a little bit different because like people don't have their families and stuff. So I think like when they go to the den or the hooches and things like that, like I don't know. Like I think maybe that is an outlet to some people. You know.
Drinking?
Yeah.
Right, but drinking has been proven to not be a healthy outlet.
Well, yeah.
Alcohol in itself is a depressant,
but I mean, just here in this atmosphere, you know, like there's definitely the people that go out every single weekend and like it's cheap drinks. So I mean, like why not, right? Like I'm not gonna say like why not, but I mean like I think that's some people's mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and that could be some people's mentality, but I mean, if you go out drinking every night and you're getting blackout drunk every night and nobody says anything to you. Like, hey man, you've been drinking a lot. Is everything all right? And yeah, you know, everybody's away from their families. Everybody.
They'll just tell you, oh well, you're a Kunsan, so it's okay. You know, like oh
well,
everybody drinks.
That's a mentality that the Air Force is trying to get rid of, which I think is a great thing. This whole you're in Korea, so you might as well do what you want, kind of thing, or you're overseas, so go live it up. You need to remember that there is a home. You are going to go home eventually.
Yeah.
And even if you have like your wife and kids overseas with you in England or something, you know, if you're going out every night and not spending any time with them, it's probably not the best thing long term for your family. You know.
That's true.
If I was going to make something illegal, which is a stupid idea because it's already been proven that it didn't work, would be prohibition. I would make alcohol illegal. If I could go back in time and switch marijuana and alcohol when they got illegalized, I would have done it.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's good. I've never thought of it that way.
Because people, you know, everybody thinks, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to go out for a couple drinks. And okay, yeah, a couple drinks, you know, whatever. But then you go out for a couple drinks the next night, and a couple drinks the next night. And all you're doing is pushing down your feelings, you know.
Yeah.
You're, in my opinion, you know, some people might, you know, that's happy for them, but...
There's no actual physical result coming out of it.
No.
Like, it doesn't make anything better.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think just like in the things that I've experienced, just not even my experience, but everybody else's experiences, that's what scares me. You know, like almost like a scared straight kind of thing, you know? Like you see people getting kicked out over it or, you know, losing rank or money or things like that. Like, that's enough for me, you know?
I completely agree. You know, I think that if they just made drinking illegal in the military, that it was just a part of it, I think that we'd be in a good case.
I think that would, I don't want to say it would create problems, but...
Oh, it would absolutely create problems. It's just like Prohibition did. Prohibition created massive problems. But it's because of the view that people have about drinking. People view drinking as a social thing. And, you know, once in a while, yeah, drinking can be a social thing, but when you're drinking every day,
yeah,
you're not doing any good for yourself.
I think you're turning into, like, the drug use. You know what I mean? So, like, obviously you're not supposed to do drugs, but how many people a month do they catch? You know what I mean?
You're right.
So would you make it a severe punishment if they got caught?
Or would it be like an LOC, LOR?
In my Air Force, or my military?
Yeah.
I would treat it, which the Air Force does a great job in trying to treat alcoholism with the ADAP program, and mental health is always open. They always have phone numbers. But I would do more intense treatment for something that could be considered alcoholism. And the Air Force does an awesome job trying to identify alcoholism. When I was in England, I took a survey and told them that I was having, you know, 1 or 2 drinks a night with dinner. Now for us, 1 or 2 drinks a night means 1 or 2 drinks a night off, which is really once every 2 days, because I was working 24s. And I didn't view that as a problem. The Air Force did, and sent me to ADAPT, which got me to realize, well, if I'm drinking every off day, it's probably not a good thing. Something is wrong. And then they, you know, yeah, I'm really missing home. I'm 18. I've never been away from my family. And they got me the help that I needed, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the great things that the Air Force has done, is gotten rid of the culture of drinking in the military. Because you hear some of these old stories of people just going out and blacking out on the street. Mm-hmm. And not only does that present a bad image of the Air Force, it's a bad image of you, a bad image of, if you're overseas, Americans in general. It's just a bad image.
I don't even think it's just like if you're overseas though. I mean, like where we came from, you know, in like Clovis and Portales, like they can spot you a mile away whether you're military or not. And,
right.
Like, you know,
yeah.
I think that's why, you know, some of the people that lived in the town had a bad personification of military because of maybe a couple incidents that they had with, you know, one military member or another.
Yeah, and you'll see that everywhere that you go. There's always going to be people who view the military as a bad thing because of one or two bad personal experiences, and that's human nature. You know, if I met you and you told me to fuck off the first day I'd be like, okay, well, that's weird. And then I might, you know, be like, hey, you're right. And if you told me to fuck off again, I'd probably be like, okay, well, I'm just not going to deal with this person anymore. And it's the same thing when you look at it from their perspective. You know, a lot of military people don't think about it as you're kind of a guest in their little area. Mm-hmm. You know, in Clovis, yeah, we're all Americans, but there's people that were born and raised in Clovis. We are a guest of their hometown. Yeah. And when you want to go out and get drunk and puke on the sidewalks and piss all over buildings, which I never did and he never did, but it shows a bad image. It shows that you don't care about the place where these people were born and raised. Yeah. And that's obviously not everywhere. But I think that everywhere you go, there will be people who view us in a bad light because of one or two incidents with bad eggs who abused the place that they were staying instead of saying, well, thank you for letting me come to your hometown and embracing it instead of abusing it.
That's true.
And especially overseas, like here, is a big deal. Koreans are a very customary people. Mm-hmm. There are ways that they do things, and when you don't follow their customs, it shows disrespect towards them. Right. But people don't think about it that way. They don't think, oh well, I'm in Korea, I need to follow their rules. Mm-hmm. I can't tell you how many people I've heard say, well, this is a little piece of America, so I should be able to do whatever I want. You are a guest in this country. Mm-hmm. Now, we might have our other reasons for being here, but they still said, yeah, you can come on in here and live here, and we will embrace you guys and let you be here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of goes back to what we were saying before we even started this. Like, you were saying, if you just stop, take a second, think about what you're actually doing, and then apply it, you know? Like, don't be so much in the moment, like I think.
Well, I mean, being in the moment could be a good thing. Like, not fucking whipping your phones out every chance that you get to take a video of something. I was watching a Metallica concert, the movie, and these people had their cell phones out the whole time, videoing, like, oh man, look at this, and posting on their little fucking Facebooks, instead of just putting their fucking phones away and saying, holy shit, yeah, fucking Metallica. You know, and that happens everywhere. People want to whip their fucking phones out and take selfies and do all this, and yeah, I mean, that's cool, you know, okay, I got a picture of myself in Korea, but put your phone down, walk around a little bit, and experience the world, but you didn't, I mean, yeah.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
I think that if people thought of every decision not from an individual point, every decision from how is this going to better the community? How is this going to better not just me, but people around me? We would be in a much better place.
But how many people are really going to think that way? You know what I mean? Like, I definitely understand and I agree with that, but I mean, how many people? I think people are too selfish.
People are 100% too selfish, but it's a culture, and part of it is evolutionarily, I don't even know if that's a word, but through evolution, you know, human beings they want everything for themselves. I want this deer so that way he doesn't have that deer, so that way I can eat and I can preserve my family because my family is what's important.
Yeah.
And that's fine when you don't have, 12 billion people in the world or whatever the fuck we have now, and that there's not enough to go around. There's not.
Yeah.
There's no way of getting around it. We do not have enough resources to sustain everybody in the world. So nowadays, if people thought, okay, well, like the driver's license thing that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm 16, and I want a car, bad. If I thought to myself, well, all I'm really going to be doing is driving a mile to school, another mile to work, and then back home, do I really need a car? Yeah, I probably don't. But what if I want to go on like a road trip or something? Road trip with your friends. Well, I mean, I could probably borrow my dad's car if I planned it out well enough. So do you really have a need for a license? Probably not. My dad is a great example. He grew up in the city of Chicago. He didn't have a car until he was 26 when he had to drive 40 miles to work because he took buses everywhere.
Yeah.
Not just with driver's licenses, but people need to stop and think, do I need this? I was 16 when I got my driver's license. My mom and dad worked from 8 in the morning till about 6 at night. And I had work to go to after school at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive 30 miles to work, another 50 miles the other way to hockey practice, back home at 8 o'clock, another 30 miles back, or whatever it was. I probably had a need for a car. I probably could have taken a bus everywhere, honestly. But I probably needed a car,
Yeah.
And so I got my driver's license and I got a car. But some people, they just don't need cars. Some people just don't need, nobody needs to have 8 kids.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. But some people like that big family feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, again, and that's fine. If you can sustain your big family, then have your big family. Have, 100 kids if you can afford to have 100 kids, and you're not going to rely on somebody else to take care of your kids.
But even when you do have 8 kids, you can tell yourself you can, but I don't think that you can give each kid the attention that it needs. I don't think so. I don't think there's a way.
I personally don't think so, but maybe some people can, And I'm sure that, even if not, you're going to try. Some people will, at least,
Yeah.
Some people will try to give all those kids everything that they need, but I personally think, anything more than 3 kids is probably stretching it as far as, what the kid needs. Because kids don't just need money and clothes and housing. They need a certain amount of attention and a certain amount of care from both parents, a mom and a dad, or a mom and a mom, or a dad and a dad, whatever, I don't give a shit. But they need a certain amount of attention from people, and when you leave kids in front of a TV or in front of a fucking Kindle, my kids have tablets, but they're 8 and 12, and they're regulated when they can use it, whereas I see people who are using tablets as distractions for their 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, why don't you... And, some people are busy, they have jobs, and they need to use tablets, but then...
There's other means, though. Like,
maybe you shouldn't have had the kid if you were so busy that you can't take care of it.
Yeah.
Because it's been proven that when mom and dads are able to stay with their babies for longer than, the certain amount of time that they get off work, that it benefits the child more. Countries like Sweden and Finland and some other European countries are starting to do mandatory time off for fathers and mothers, paid time off, to be with your child, because it helps that country in the long run if you spend more time with your kid. And that's where we don't view it. I don't know what the actual rule is in America, but we get not a lot of time off. I know in the military we get 10 days of paternity leave. I get 10 days with my newborn baby before I have to go back to work.
Yeah.
And you know, I get it. Military is different than everywhere else. But 10 days with a newborn baby, and then I go back to not seeing him for a whole day.
Yeah, especially with our jobs. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
There are certain things that are proven to be good for kids. Spending time with your parents, and you know, you can't control dads that don't want to stay around, moms that don't want to stay around, and that I get it. You know, but then the other parent has to make up all that slack in order to be good for the child.
I don't get that though, because I feel like it goes back to like what you're saying, like the people being ready to have kids and stuff. Like, you guys already had the kid. Like, that's your responsibility as a person that made this other person. That you should stick around. You know what I mean? You can't just dip out.
What you're viewing things from a societal perspective, whereas most people view it from an individual perspective. If I was...
That is an individual perspective, though. I mean, you made that person, and you're just gonna abandon it. You know what I mean?
But why are you abandoning it? Because you're not ready. Which is an individual perspective. I agree that you should, I think that you should have to be a part of a group of two, boy, girl, boy, I don't care, to have a child. Not saying that single parents don't make it and do awesome things, because they do, but it's been proven that dual parent households that get along and are ready to have kids from an emotional perspective do better. You know, if I was 16 and I got a girl pregnant, I mean, I would have stayed around. I would have at least taken care of it. But I could see how some 16-year-olds would be like, fuck this.
Yeah.
Like, I could barely take care of myself, and now I got to take care of a baby.
Yeah.
But you made the decision to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what it is. It's a decision.
It is a decision.
You know?
But people don't think of that as a big-time decision.
Versus if you just stop, think about the situation.
You put a Jimmy on, then...
You're good to go.
I mean, well, you're not good to go always, but there are certain things that you can do, you know, contraceptives or what, but people don't view it that way. People think, oh, well, I want to have sex.
Yeah.
Not, oh, are you on the pill? Do you have your Mirena in?
Yeah, they're not
Do
gonna
you
ask
have a
questions.
Jimmy? No. I mean, 16-year-old kids are
Having kids.
nowadays little
Kids.
fuck machines. So most, I'm not going to say most, some of them, but people don't view their decisions from a big world perspective. Again, the societal perspective instead of the individual perspective.
Yeah.
I was ready and financially ready, emotionally ready to have a house with my wife, buy a house. So we did it. We were ready to have a house.
Yeah.
If we would have rushed in and bought a house when we weren't ready, yeah, I mean, you got the house, but you can't afford it. People are going house poor because they have 8 fucking bedroom houses when they got 2 kids and a mom and dad.
Yeah.
Why do you need 8 bedrooms? But that comes back to the way of life that Americans have. You know, back in the 40s, houses were a lot smaller.
Mm-hmm.
They were, you know, 1,000 square feet in the 40s was, you're living big. Nowadays, 1,000 square feet is what one person thinks that they need to live.
But I mean, back then you also had a different mentality though too, and like the job market was different. Like you could get out of high school, go work a job for however many years, and you're done. You're retired. You know what I mean? And you didn't need to go to college all the time. Like you know.
That's something that I wish people would bring back. Not everybody needs to go to college. The plumbers of the world, the construction workers of the world, the labor force. Some people just don't need to go to school, but their job is just as important.
But in society's view, that's like grade C. You know what I mean?
You're right.
It's not grade A. It's not grade B. Like, oh well, you're a garbage man. You know, like they look down on it. You know, but I mean, somebody's trash needs to be picked up. You know what I mean?
That's exactly right. But that's the societal way to look at it. You're starting to fall in to see things the way that I have tried to view things since I was about 21 years old. You know, I became a lot less selfish when I met my wife because she's everything, you know. But if people thought, hey, you know, don't look down on that guy. He takes our garbage away somewhere so that way we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. That guy takes our trash away. Oh, you see that guy right there? Oh, he builds roads. That's pretty fucking cool, right? He lays roads. This road that we're driving on, that guy built it. That's pretty awesome. But people don't view it like that. They see, oh, well, he's a construction worker. He's, you know, whatever. He's not the CEO of the construction company.
Yeah.
People, you know, oh, that guy, you know, that plumber right there? He fixed our bathrooms so we had running water. How fucking awesome is that? They got rid of, they didn't get rid of, but they started thinking that, you know, doctors and lawyers and veterinarians and all these people was the only way to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're not a doctor like your father. No, I'm a plumber. I keep your water running.
Yeah.
I'm an electrician. Lights, that's me. I did that. But
Sure.
people want to think, oh, well, if I'm not a doctor, then I'm not a successful person. I'm not a lawyer, then what am I doing with my life? You know, we need people who clean houses. We need people who take care of lawns. We need people who build things.
Yeah.
But society has gotten away from the builders and gotten more to the architects, the people who design the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people want to be architects. People want to be lawyers. People want to be doctors. Not a lot of people grow up knowing, like, hey, you know what? I want to build houses when I grow up. I want to be the construction worker that builds your house. I want to be a plumber when I grow up. I want to keep water running throughout this whole world. I want to be the first person that brings water to an African country. Nobody grows up thinking about that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and I try and teach my kids that even the lowest employee at a company does a lot. The janitor who goes and takes the trash out and mops the floors, he's got a pretty important job if you think about it from the aspect of he removes the trash so that way it doesn't build up and the office doesn't smell and it's not unsanitary. Yeah. He cleans the floors so that way you don't slip and fall. He does all these things that help you, but everybody views him as a janitor, so it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Bad thing.
Like when do you think that happened though? Because I don't think it's always been like that. I don't think like it's always been.
I think the mid '80s is when that started to change. When the Wall Street Revolution happened and everybody wanted to be millionaires, instead of, hey, you know what? I'm making $20 an hour being a garbage man and my family's taken care of. But then you got Joe down the street who was a garbage man last week, and now all of a sudden he's making $2 million a year, and well, I want to be like Joe. Joe's got this and this and this, and instead of being like, yeah, but I have my wife, my kids, my house, and all this, but what does he have? People want to be like other people instead of saying, well, I have a wife, I have kids, I have houses paid for, I have, you know, my family's taken care of. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with being me? Everything's good in my world. All of a sudden people are saying, well, what about Joe's world? Joe's world is pretty fucking nice. He's got a big Corvette and a Hummer or whatever the fuck the new big car is. And, well, I want to be like Joe. Whereas you got, you know, pretty cool stuff too when you think about it. Like, hey, I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Yeah. I think that's the big thing, like what you said about it, is the worlds. Because I do think that everyone has like their own like mental capacity world, and I think maybe at sometimes they try and like merge somebody else's world with theirs. Like, oh, like you said, like the guy down the street's making $2 million. You're doing just fine, like where you're at. You know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily need to go off and buy the 2017 lifted whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you have a car that's very reliable. Like, you're good. Like, your family's taken care of. Like what you said. Like, what's wrong? You know?
Well, like I said, in the you know, I'm sure it started happening in the 70s and 60s too, but all of a sudden people weren't happy with what they had, and they started thinking that they weren't happy because of what they don't have. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't have this car. I have a 2002 Honda Civic that still runs and gets me wherever I need to go, but I mean, he has a 2015 Ram 12,000 or whatever, you know. Yeah. That's a pretty fucking sweet truck. But you don't see that he's paying $6,000 a month in insurance and another $2,000 a month in gas.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about that too. It's just that people kind of get scammed into that too.
Yep.
Like people don't know what an interest rate is, or whatever. And I know you said, and I agree with you 100%. I never thought of it that way. You said that there should be more life skill classes in high schools to prepare you
High
for
schools,
life.
elementary schools. There's nothing wrong with teaching 5 and 6 year olds that, oh, you want that car or you want that toy? Well, work, do some chores, and I'll give you $1 for every chore that you do. You do 15 chores, and you can have that.
Mm-hmm.
You can get that toy that you wanted. But if you start saying, "Oh, I'll just give you $15. I'll give you $15. You can get the toy," which is fine. You want to buy your kid the toy. I mean, that's cool. But you need to teach kids the value of the dollar.
Right.
You need to teach kids hard work. My kids get money for chores, and if they want something, I mean, obviously I'm going to buy them food and stuff. But if it's something that isn't a need, I'm not going to buy it for them.
Right.
I'm going to have them work for it, because then it means more to them.
Exactly.
I did 50 chores to get this awesome spaceship. Whew, this spaceship rocks. And I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
So they take pride in it. They take longer care of it.
There's more value to that.
It's more value to you when you worked for something.
It's true. I think when you were talking about the cars at 16 and stuff, there's a lot of people in my high school that their parents were like farmers or whatever. So I mean, obviously they had a little bit of money, and come to school the next day. I got this brand new car or whatever. Versus like, I don't think there's any value to that. You know what I mean? Because they're just given this car. You know what I mean? And they didn't necessarily have to work for it. Or like, hey, I'm gonna give you my old car, and if you can take care of that, then maybe I'll upgrade you to the next car or anything else like that. Because that's what my parents did. They let me drive around their car and stuff, and I knew I couldn't mess that up because that's what they took to get to work and stuff. You know what I mean? So.
Right. For me, my parents, they didn't buy me a car, but my parents let me use a car that we had, and they did the same thing for my brother, which, for the way that me and my brother was raised, was fine, because we knew that my parents worked their asses off to give us what we needed, and they did more than anybody could ask.
Right.
Which, I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that when you raise kids a certain way, but if you're just if you buy your kid everything, you're going to get fucking my super sweet 16 type of people who expect to get a fucking Bentley, but they get a Lamborghini and then they're upset about it.
Yeah.
Whereas I could not have been more excited when my parents said, well, you could just drive the Jeep from now on. I was like fucking mind blown.
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents trusted me enough with their car to say, you know what, you can drive this, and you're okay, and we trust you. Whereas instead of them saying, oh, well, we bought you a brand new Jeep, here you go. Here's a brand new Jeep. Which, I mean, if that's what you want to do, then that's fine, but I don't think that it's the right way to raise kids, just giving them everything that they want.
Yeah,
I think that they need to work for it. And I had a job since I was 13 years old, at least one the entire time. Whether it was reffing hockey, stocking liquor shelves, working at TJ Maxx, working at Jewel Osco. I had a job my whole life growing up.
But that instills something in you though, that a lot of people who just, let's say the Air Force for example, just gets the Air Force job and they're just like, oh well, this is my first job. They don't. I don't think that there's the value or they appreciate what they actually have. And I don't think that work ethic's there either, because I think, but I can only speak for fire, so I don't know. But when you come to fire, you can't drag your ass on it. You know what I mean? You have to be hustling, and when you get there, you're the lowest guy on the totem pole, so you're gonna have to do more work than everybody else. But I don't know. It's just my 2 cents. But I appreciate you doing this with me, man. I know we've spent the last 5 years together. I wish you nothing but the best when you go off and be with your family. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time, just been procrastinating. So I appreciate all the things that you've done for me. You definitely given me the hookup a couple times, and I'm gonna miss you, man. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss you too. Gay. You're gonna edit that out, right?